Welcome to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has helped shape your professional career? I'm your host, Stuart Brown, the developer of studentaffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. On our pages, we have the most cost-effective job posting board listing hundreds of open student services positions, a wide range of webinars, and a virtual exhibit hall. On today's episode, I am very pleased to have Dr. George McClellan. George is a professor of higher education at the University of Mississippi. He has been in the field of student affairs for over 40 years. Previously, he was a vice chancellor of student affairs at Indiana University, Purdue University, vice president for student development at Dickinson State University. He is the author of numerous books in higher education. Welcome to the program, George.
Thank you, sir. I'm really glad to be here. I'm a big fan of Stuart Brown and studentaffairs.com, so delighted to be here. I have used the website and I have used job postings, and so I am a customer and a pleased client.
Ooh, I like that. And I've known George for many, many years. So it's a pleasure to have him on The One Thing. So George, what is your one thing?
I would say never ask permission. To whatever extent people think I'm successful in this field, people seem to think that. I probably just have a lot of people fooled, but to whatever extent I've been successful in student affairs, and when I say successful, it doesn't mean sort of, build attention for myself. It means make a difference. When I've been able to be successful in student affairs, I never once ask anybody permission. I'd be at work somewhere and I would see something that would need to be done, a situation, an opportunity to help students be more successful, to help make the community more inclusive, whatever it was. And nobody else seemed to be really involved in it. And I thought, well, let me just dive in and start to see what I can make happen. And so I did. And that usually turned out pretty well. And my theory was always, well, until somebody stops me or yells at me or whatever, I'm just going to keep going. More often than not, what I found out was once people realized, oh, hey, wait, something's happening over there. And by that time, I would already be able to say, well, yeah, some stuff's happening. And here's some really cool results of what's happening. People love joining onto a winner. They love signing on to a success story. And so then you'd think they invented the thing. But that was fine with me because, I was just interested in what the outcomes were. I didn't really need the big handshake or whatever. So, yeah. Never ask permission, just go for it and sort of wait till either somebody tells you to stop or until somebody notices and is like, yeah, let me help you with that, and they're like, great, come on in. Water's fine.
Is there a story behind that?
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is when I was a graduate assistant at the University of Arizona, I was fortunate enough I had two GA ships. One was Dr. Dud Woodard, who was a professor in higher education and my doc chair and all kinds of cool stuff. But the other was with Sonny Taylor, who at the time, her title was like Vice Chancellor for Campus Life or something like that, and literally sat right outside her door. And Sonny was the national chair of NASPA's, what was then called the Minority Undergraduate Fellows Program. It's now called NUF. So anyway, at the time, Doug had actually started it when he was NASPA president. And at the time, it was really designed to bring in Black folks and the term wouldn't have been used in those days, people of color into the student affairs field. And it had run that way for a while. It was really focused on racially minoritized students. But I'm like, why not people with disabilities? And why not LGBTQ people? And why not international students? And why not all kinds of other folks, right, who have been, again, words that we would use now, who have minoritized identities, who maybe didn't always find the easiest and most welcoming pathways into higher ed and student affairs. So I was the GA who was the work behind the title. So the applications were coming into me. And I didn't ever ask anybody whether it would be okay to expand the definition of the program. I just started accepting applications. And I accepted the first international student into the program that I know of, and I accepted the first openly LGBTQ applicant to the program that I know of. And again, I just started accepting apps from all kinds of folks. And then somebody noticed, and they're like, did we change the program? And I'm like, well, yeah. Nobody said you couldn't. And the students were doing great and they were having terrific experiences, and it was being well received in NASPA and across different student affairs divisions. When I left the position, NASPA actually gave me my first little, how you get these little polyurethane thank you plaque things. That was my first little souvenir keepsake. Was NASPA actually gave me an award for the work I did around NUF, which I never really got permission to do.
It's a great concept, but I think you also have to maybe understand boundaries a little before you, let's say, just dive right in and say, hey, I'm going to do this.
I was keeping in the spirit of as far as I was concerned, the program was about increasing inclusion. And I figure as long as I stay in that channel, I'm okay. And it was a risk I was willing to take. And I realize that's always part of everybody's calculus, right? But for me, I'm single and I'm like, okay, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They're going to tell me to go away. That's fine. I'll go somewhere else and start. And I realize that, not everybody has that sort of freedom. And so, I'm not encouraging anybody to take risks they can't live with, but I wasn't switching it all up. I was just helping it stretch a little bit.
Let's think of some of the listeners that tune into the one thing, maybe grad students, new professionals, mid-level, I don't know, even VPs of student affairs. And they're thinking, wow, if George can do that and how successful he's been, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to do things without permission. So when I was talking before about understanding boundaries, maybe not so much with the MUF program, but in today's world, is that something that you should have that initiative, but also check on things before you maybe dive full in?
Again, I'm going to say, as long as you're in the spirit of the thing and you're coming with a good heart and you're being ethical, no laws were broken. I expanded the definition of the program within the spirit of the definition of the program. I think you got to figure out where your power is. And my power in that story was, first of all, I'm the person with the knowledge. I'm the one doing the work. And second of all, I have the power of the motive, the sort of ethical purity of the thing. Really, that's all I was worried about. I just figured nobody was paying attention. I was in the spirit of the thing. Let's go. And throughout my career, there was a point at which I sort of started working with graduate and professional students. And at the time, folks in higher ed didn't pay a lot of attention to graduate and professional students. We said we were student affairs, and the sort of unspoken word in that was undergraduate students. Well, I just started creating stuff for graduate and professional students and inviting them to programs. And I figured they're students. They deserve support and attention too. And by the time anybody sort of figured out what was going on, we had all sorts of success stories with grad and professional students at Northwestern. Then all of a sudden, everybody wanted to be a part of it. And that's okay with me too. So anyway, that's my thing. If I'm going to say one thing, it's don't ask permission. Just if you know that you're in a good space and that you're doing things ethically and in the right spirit of helping students, and nobody else seems to be, it's not like I took anything from anybody. It's not like I shut anybody out of anything. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to step into that and do some work.
I've been speaking with Dr. George McClellan, who is a full professor at the University of Mississippi, former vice chancellor of student affairs at the Indiana University, Purdue University, VP of student development at Dickinson State University. For grad students and new professionals, you have probably come across George. He is the author of numerous books in higher education. You have been listening to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has helped shape your professional career? I've been your host, Stuart Brown, the developer of studentaffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. I hope you will join us next time for another episode of the Student Affairs One Thing.